Broadcasting from the studios of WKEN, where every day it's the weekend. It's the Ken Calvert Show with your host, Ken Calvert.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the casual studios of WKEN, where every day it's the weekend. If you would be so kind as to hit me with a like on the Ken Calvert Show fan page on Facebook, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at Ken Calvert Show. Coming up on today's podcast, my chat with Ozzy Osbourne from 2010, when we were discussing the release of his book, I Am Ozzy. Today's podcast is called Our Rock Stars Are Starting to Show Their Age. Speaking of Mr. Ozzy Osbourne, last week Ozzy postponed all of his 2019 tour dates, both in North America and Europe, as he recovers from an injury sustained while dealing with his recent bout of pneumonia. The Black Sabbath frontman fell at his Los Angeles home, aggravating a 16-year-old injury from his 2003 ATV accident. Ozzy and an ATV. Two things that I would never expect to hear in the same sentence. Anyway, the accident required additional surgery. Ozzy will remain under doctor's care in Los Angeles as he continues to recover. On the April 8th episode of the CBS daytime talk show, The Talk, Sharon teared up as she discussed her husband's latest health scare, saying that he's doing great, but that he's sorry to disappoint his legions of fans. She said, "Oh, Lord, I don't know where to begin. At the beginning of the year, he had a bad flu, and that went to bronchitis. Then it went to pneumonia. And then, when he got out of the hospital, he had a bad accident at home. He fell years ago. He had a motorbike accident where he was in a coma for days. And what he did was he re-injured his back and neck and his shoulders, and of all the metal rods and everything that were put into his body, they were all dislodged. So we had to cancel this year's events. But he's good, he's fine, he's great." He's not great. How could he be great? I've had 4 spine surgeries, and I'm never great. I'm sure you've seen this. Just this past week, a 75-year-old Mick Jagger had open heart surgery to replace a heart valve, and he postponed all of the Rolling Stones tour dates. Yet, Keith hasn't missed a beat. Well, not exactly. He did fall out of that tree in 2006. As it turns out, Richards cleared up these rumors about that fall in his autobiography called Life. Great book. If you have not read it, stop listening to the podcast, go to the bookstore, Amazon, whatever, and get it. The autobiography Life by our good friend Keith Richards. He says in the book, "I landed hard on my heels and my head went back and hit the trunk of the tree. Hard. And that was it." Richards noticed that he wasn't fazed by the knock at the time, and even 2 days later, his vacation seemed to be going great. However, during a day trip out to the sea, he was knocked back by a boat swell, and suddenly he got a blinding headache and urged everyone to head back to land. His pain got worse and worse, which was alarming. Richards wrote, "Since I never have headaches, and if I do, it's an aspirin and it's gone. I'm not a headache man." Well, I'm kind of thinking you are, because, as it turns out, Richards had fractured his skull in the tree branch incident. This caused a intracranial hemorrhage, that is to say, bleeding in the skull, which in turn produced acute subdural hematoma. Again, that's blood clots between the brain and its outer protective layer, and led to an emergency flight to New Zealand for treatment. The flight to New Zealand from Fiji was so traumatizing that when Richards ended up having to have the surgery, he had to have it done there by a doctor named Andrew Law, who happened to be a very, very big Rolling Stones fan. Thankfully, the procedure was a success. Law had opened up the skull, sucked out all of the blood clots, and then put the bone back on like a little hat with 6 titanium pins to connect the hat back to its skull. Sounds like a pleasant surgery to me. I pray the man was asleep. You know, sometimes with brain surgery, they don't put you to sleep. After a few weeks of convalescence, which included a hospital staff who thoughtfully brought me a little extra morphine, Richards was as good as new, and actually, he added, I've never had a headache since. And by the way, I don't know if you have, I haven't read or heard anything about when Mick will be able to tour again, let alone get back to some sort of a normal life. Now again, remember this podcast is called Our Rock Stars Are Starting to Show Their Age. Okay, so speaking of the Rolling Stones, they were obviously forced to cancel all of their appearances, especially the one at New Orleans Jazz Fest, which is coming up. Fleetwood Mac was asked to fill their spot and agreed. Now, Fleetwood Mac has also canceled their gig at the New Orleans Jazz Festival as Stevie Nicks recovers from a bout with the flu, which begs the question. Today is April 10th. The show was scheduled for May 2nd. Damn, that flu is nasty. Oh, I can feel the haters now. Could be bronchitis. Could end up being pneumonia. Well, you're probably right, so I'll shut up. At least it's not the measles. So we got that going for us. Ah, yes, our dearly beloved rock stars are starting to show their age. Then there's former Fleetwood Mac guitarist Lindsey Buckingham, who underwent open-heart surgery back in February, not that long ago, and that has resulted in vocal cord damage. Not a good year so far. Peter Frampton coming to Pine Knob, July 25th. A couple of months ago, Peter Frampton was diagnosed with a rare degenerative muscular disorder called inclusion body myositis. There's an acronym for that, IBM. And that diagnosis means the tour will be his last ever. The muscular disease will prevent him from basically playing the guitar, moving around, and doing what he loves to do and does so very damn well. Not long ago, Neil Schon had emergency gallbladder surgery in February and was forced to postpone some tour dates. Our rock stars are starting to show their age. And don't forget, our very own Bob Seger. 2017, he had that neck injury, required surgery, and that nearly ended his career. Well, you're probably saying to yourself, gosh, Ken, this isn't the Up With People podcast that we've come to know and love. Of course, Up With People was a band, and guess what? Up With People, every member of that band is suffering from tinnitus. A lot of people like to call it tinnitus, but it's tinnitus. I know because I have it, and we'll get there in just a couple of moments. But according to a German study, I thought you'd find this interesting, that analyzed the health insurance records of 7 million working musicians. 7 million, that seems to me to be just about every one. Musicians are nearly 4 times more likely to suffer noise-induced hearing loss than those in any other profession. They were also 57% more likely to have tinnitus, ringing in their ears, brought on by their work. Well, shut the front door, Sherlock. On the Who Tour in 1989, Pete Townsend played his guitar behind a glass partition. Who singer Roger Daltrey also suffers from hearing loss. And then instead of going through each and every individual case, happen to look up and find, I'll just list the artists for you. Neil Young, Ozzy Osbourne, oddly enough, George Martin, the famed Beatles producer, Anthony Kiedis from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Chris Martin of Coldplay. Now, you and I have gone to a lot of concerts, a lot of really loud concerts. You and I have come out of there with our ears ringing, or sometimes actually not being able to hear for a couple of days. I remember that with Johnny Winter and Rick Derringer. I was really, really close, and I was right in front of a column of speakers. I got in my car, and I realized I could hear nothing out of my left side. It really freaked me out. It scared me. So tinnitus is very, very real. Imagine the musicians being out in front of that equipment every night, night after night after night. Of course they have hearing loss. DJs, for example, we wear headphones in order to do our job, wearing them at least 4, 5, 6 hours a day. And you notice throughout your career that incrementally you start turning them up louder and louder and louder so you can hear. So there you have a little backstory on today's podcast, the one we are calling Our rock stars are starting to show their age. Ow! Ooh! I just twisted my neck saying that. Well, let's get on with the interview here, friends. Turn it up, because here it comes, Ozzy Osbourne on today's podcast. Listen to my interview going back to 2010 with Ozzy Osbourne, talking about the release of his book, I Am Ozzy. Other books of note by Ozzy include Frampton, Dr. Ozzy, Ordinary People, Our Story, Officially Osbourne, Opening the Doors to the Land of Oz, and Ozzy Osbourne, Diary of a Madman. Thank you for listening, and my friends, I will see you soon. Be well. Good morning, Ozzy.
Hey, dude.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, actually. I'm doing fine. A bit early in the morning, but it's fine.
It's not that early in the morning, is it, Ozzy?
For me, rock and roll, it's the rock and roll time it is.
Congratulations on a powerful, powerful read.
It's kind of like a Cinderella book, in the respect that it's just a really truthful story. It's not BS. It's really truthful,
The last thing I would say about the book is that it's BS. The one thing that I find fascinating about it is the fact that how dire your straits were, if you will, as a young...
People can read it and go, what? If he can do it, I can,
Well, let me ask you a couple of things. Did you find relief maybe in music then to get away?
Oh, yeah, I used to daydream sitting on my doorstep, and looking in the middle of the street. And when the Beatles happened, I thought, wouldn't it be great if Paul McCartney or John Lennon or George Harrison or Ringo was to marry my wife? So, what kids do,
Of course.
It's in your head. It got me into music, and it lit a fire in me, which still burns to this day. It's what I do is not a job. It's just it's a gift.
Now, when you were at your point, because you and I unfortunately don't have as much time as we used to have, and we have spent together some time back in the mid-'70s, at your all-time peak in terms of the combination of alcohol and drugs and the madness that may have been going through Ozzy Osbourne, how intense, how involved with all of that were you?
Oh, big time with drugs.
Yeah, the combination of everything that could get you buzzed.
Anything that could give me a buzz, I would do. I've done glue, I've done ethyl chloride, I've done LSD, I've done a lot of things. I'm not really proud of it. I don't want anybody to think, it's cool. It's not. It was what I would do to get. I thought that was successful. What was all about getting cocaine and the thing I never used to do. Very rarely did was go on stage lowly. I did occasionally, but. I think it's disrespectful for your audience to be like that, to have it on stage. Loaded, and people go, "Oh, it's going to be great tonight." He's loaded. It goes hand in hand. It's not a very difficult equation to work out how sex and drugs and rock and roll got together. It's all part of the perks.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I want to if you don't know who I'm talking to on my live line right now, it's the one, the only, and I say that with great reverence, my friend, Ozzy Osbourne, and the new book is available now. It's called I Am Ozzy, and you can only imagine where he drew from. There are so many things that have happened in your life, so many things have transcended reality shows. Of course, the delightful situation that my wife and I really enjoyed, and that was watching Kelly on Dancing with the Stars.
Didn't she do great?
Do great. She was unbelievable.
It saved that dancing show saved her, because she was going down that one path.
Well, now let me ask Ozzy Osbourne a couple of quick questions. So, when you get up each and every day, I know that you have a routine, just like I have a routine as I am getting up there in years. I've been doing radio now for almost 40 years, which I hate to admit, but I still enjoy every second of my life. You still, the passion for the road, for the music is still there?
It's kind of, to be perfectly honest with you, it's a love-hate relationship. I can't make my mind. When I'm on the road, I want to be at home. When I'm home, I want to be on the road. So I can't wait for the day they clone people.
Now, wait a minute. You just said the most fascinating thing I think I've heard maybe ever. You said when you're home, you want to be on the road. When you're on the road, you want to be home. That's funny, because when I'm home, I want to be on the radio, and when I'm on the radio, I want to be home.
I always said to Sharon that the day I play to empty halls, I'll stop, you know. I mean, I can't stop doing what I'm doing. It's a gift from somewhere else, you know.
Are you in love as much as I think you are with your wife, Sharon?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course I'm in love with my wife. I mean, she's in love with me. It's my family, you know.
I'm talking about the intensity of the love, because obviously she was your manager for so many years, and
Yeah, but I always loved her from a distance for a long while, but I was married to another woman at one point, and I never thought anything would materialise with it. And suddenly,
the book again is I Am Ozzy, and it's available in stores, and it is incredible. The pictures that come with it as well are absolutely fascinating. Your timeline in terms of your life and how it's progressed. Are you thinking about slowing down? I mean, is there a point?
No, I'm just in the salon doing the eyes first, so I'm going to be out there for a long time, you know.
What is, of everything that you've done your entire life, I'm going Barbara Walters on you now, what are you most proud of?
Staying alive.
Wow.
I mean, it wouldn't have surprised anybody if I hadn't woke up one morning, you know.
And the saddest moment of your life was what?
When Randy Rhoads died.
Yep. You know what? Can I tell you something? You are one of the coolest guys. I mean, I feel like I'm obliging you, but I'm not. You are really a good guy, and I'm so happy to be talking to you today. Anything else that you want to tell the listeners and me?
I love to see the people. I really do love to see the people, you know.
Will Detroit, the true rock and roll capital of the world, be on the schedule?
Oh, I'm sure it will be. I mean, Detroit's one of my favorite places to play. It really is. I mean, it's rock and roll city, you know.
Thank you. Continued success. I Am Ozzy by Ozzy Osbourne, in stores right now. I thank you for taking the time to join us.
You're very welcome, sir.
All right. Thank you so much, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Be well.
You can subscribe to the Ken Calvert Show podcast on Apple iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. It's also available by going directly to www.thekencalvertshow.com. You can reach Ken at kencalvertpodcast@gmail.com. The preceding program is the property of Ken Calvert and may not be broadcast without the written permission of Ken Calvert, unless you want your knees broken.